Oklahoma City Thunder get a big win over the New York Knicks, bouncing back from their first loss in over a month in the regular season. It was behind Isaiah Joe's career night and SGA playing like an MVP.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member, and beat writer for Thunder on SI, Ryland Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Ryland_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. On today's show, we're diving into the Thunder just dismantling the New York Knicks, bouncing back from their first regular season loss in a month whenever they lost to Cleveland on Wednesday, getting a win on the road, sweeping the series over the New York Knicks. What a game that this was. Today's show is a bonus episode. We already had our 5 shows for the week, wanted to go ahead and get a recap out here since the Thunder do play. We always do one after the Thunder games. A little bit of a head cold, so apologize for the sound of this show. Hopefully we'll back to normal eventually, God willing. Now, when you look at this game, the Thunder and the Knicks just were dreadful for half a quarter offensively. And I really do believe it had more to do with the defense and both defenses being extremely locked in. And because of that, and because you just went through a grind of a game against the same opponent a week ago for each side, I think that it was a little bit in their heads. Like they just look like, if you go back and watch, the first quarter, that the offenses for each side were sped up. They were thinking about the defensive rotations. They were thinking about the footsteps coming to take away easy looks, and neither side could get a clean shot off for the first half a quarter. And after the first stoppage, the Thunder began to roll, and they never looked back. This game only had 3 ties and 1 lead change. Again, that happened all in the first 5-6 minutes of the game. And then the Thunder went from that point on, dominating and cruising their way to a win. At one point, they got up by 30. They end up winning 126-101 over the New York Knicks. And first and foremost, I think that this is a big deal for Oklahoma City to get the season sweep over New York, to go win in the Garden on the road, because it's another feather in their cap. When we talk about this team being resilient, when we talk about this team bouncing back after adversity, the Thunder did that tonight. I mean, you could have easily seen a game like Wednesday, which was so hyped up, which had so much energy behind it. You could have seen that spiral a team in one direction or the other, and the Thunder just have not let that happen over the course of the last 2 years. You go back and look at last year. Until the second to last week of the year, I believe it was, they did not lose 3 straight games all year long. They were able to nip losing skids right away. They were able to get back in the win column right away. It added up to 57 wins. And in this season, they've done the same thing. On the rare time that they do lose a game, they don't let that turn into 2 or 3 or 4 losses and derail a week or derail half a month or anything of that nature. And this is a stretch where it easily could have, where like you lose to Cleveland and then you lose in New York and then you beat Washington, maybe stumble against a healthy Philly team, then go stumble against Cleveland. You could easily have seen this segment of the schedule spiraling on them, but it didn't. And the Thunder did a great job of not letting that happen. And it just goes back to the 0-0 mindset that the Thunder have preached from the day that Mark got here. No matter who was on the team, no matter how good they were expected to be, that's been their identity. And they've laid that foundation to now see the rewards of it once this team is a legitimate title contender. So I thought that the Thunder, in the midst of this game, did a much better job than New York of settling into the contest. A much better job of settling into the game. Like I said, both offenses were shaky, sped up, and just did not look right in the first half a quarter. But the Thunder were the only offense that actually got back on track, got the car back on the road. And part of that is because of the Thunder's depth. And this is why depth matters, because you look over there at New York, and I know that like every Knicks person in the world will talk about the off nights. You win a whole game where OG Anunoby only has 2 makes, and you had Bridges go 0 for 9, 0 for 7 from 3. Like, this is not the normal night for these guys. But whenever you have such a shallow roster, who are you going to turn to pick you up? Like, who are you going to turn to get you out of that hole? Whereas when we mentioned the slow start for the Thunder's offense, what happened? They put Isaiah Joe in, and Isaiah Joe has a career night. And you just don't have that Rolodex to flip through of players to try to find the right recipe the way the Thunder do. And that's a huge benefit in the regular season. And the fact that the Thunder can take one on the chin in an emotional game that somebody had to lose against a just awesome Cleveland team who has a chance to go to the finals. I would expect it'll be Cleveland and Boston, not a hot take here in the East Finals. Like they took one on the chin there in Cleveland, and they just immediately respond in New York in a magical building where you saw a career night from Isaiah Joe. You saw a 39-point night from Shai, only stopped by the blowout. This could have been easily Shai's first 50-point game, but he couldn't help that it was a non-competitive contest, and there's no point in playing him whenever you have the risk of injury in a blowout game, and you're in the midst of a season and in the midst of a stretch of the schedule where you've had rare off days, in this whole mix. So I get why the Thunder took him out. Again, if this was a tighter game, I think that Shai would have gone for 50 tonight in the Garden, and we know that Isaiah Joe ends up with a career-high 31 points, a career-high 8 made threes, which we're going to talk about coming up. But overall, you got to tip your cap to the Thunder's resiliency in this game and their defense. There was nothing that New York could do. Nothing. Right? Like Jalen Brunson could not get a comfortable shot off at all. And that was partly because of just how the Thunder are as a team defense, but also partly because when you talk about Shai being a two-way player and Shai being the rare two-way superstar, and this is not necessarily the knock on other superstars that it sounds like, but a lot of the other superstars are average at best defensively. There's a very select handful of guys, and Shai is among those select handful of guys who are truly impactful and good on the defensive side of the floor, and he made Jalen Brunson's night absolute torture on both sides. He torched them offensively when Shai had the ball, and he swatted away Brunson shots, and he made Brunson's life uncomfortable on the offensive end. And so this was back-to-back games against the Thunder where Brunson, really, really labored. If you take away his 12 free throw attempts that he was gifted, that 27 total does not seem as steep. And from the floor, he only makes 46% of his shots. Like the tough shot making is there. He made Brunson did a beautiful turnaround mid-range jumper at the elbow over a contesting Lou Dort, which if Lou Dort played any better defense on that shot, Lou Dort is hit with a foul. It's like that's just the stuff that you live with Brunson because he's so good. And Brunson is so awesome at hitting tough shots. He's a tough shot maker. But you forced him into a ton of tough looks. And the Thunder did a better job of, it wasn't perfect, but they did a better job of contesting the three-point line from the corners, that is, in this game. And it showed out in the box score. It showed out on the floor. And it forced the Knicks to not really have an answer offensively. And so whenever you look at this game, the Thunder just did what it took to win. They did what it took to get a big win. And coming up, we'll talk about Shai. We'll talk about Isaiah Joe and so much more. But first, I want to say right now, my good friends over at FanDuel, go check out FanDuel today to get started because from the upsets to the big wins and the game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs is better with FanDuel, and they start today. So go check them out today because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. With the FanDuel app, it gives you everything that you need for live bets, same game parlays, and so much more. Go check it out today by visiting their website and seeing the lines that you want to take advantage of by going to FanDuel.com to join today. And when you get started, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com today to get started with $200 in bonus bets. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And if you only care about the NBA, there's no shame in that whatsoever because they do have the NBA lines out there as well, including the Minnesota Timberwolves hosting the Memphis Grizzlies, where the Grizzlies are 1.5-point dogs, practically a pick 'em over there at FanDuel. So you can go check that out. And in the NFL side of things, you have the Washington Commanders +3 at Tampa Bay. Ooh, what should you do there on Sunday Night Football? Go check it out today at FanDuel.com. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you talking Thunder basketball. Folks, this was a heck of a game, a very fun game to watch from the Thunder's side of things. And you look at this team where the Thunder were the resilient team. They were the better offensive team in this game by a long shot, and it was driven by SGA, who had 39 points on 71% shooting from the floor. He went 1 for 1 from three and just held the pose after hitting that three, 8 for 8 from the free throw line. The refs were calling ticky-tack fouls in the third quarter, which kind of inflated some of Brunson and Shai's free throw attempts, I believe. 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, 1 block, and 2 turnovers in this game. He did a better job of not leaving his feet too early than he has this last week. He did leave his feet a little bit early, or at least there was some miscommunication early in this game, which did not result in the turnover because he made the pass to a cutting Lou Dort. It was a little bit of an awkward play, but I thought that this was a well-rounded, excellent game from Shai, and we mentioned what he did on the defensive end to help the Thunder stifle New York's offense. And then offensively, he got whatever he wanted. In the mid-range, at the rim, he dictated the terms and conditions of this game. And the most impressive part about it was multiple times, it was the first quarter, it was the third quarter, where he has this opportunity where he's crossing the timeline with 3 seconds left on the clock, and he gets half the length of the floor in 3 seconds to finish at the rim, and it's demoralizing, and it was deflating in the third quarter. Especially, you physically saw the Knicks revolt and just go, oh my gosh, when Shai pulled that off at the end of the third, his final bucket to put a cherry on top, 39 points and a plus 18 in this game, and only playing 29 minutes because he did not, he was not required in the fourth quarter as this game was such a blowout. But what a game from SGA. I thought that Jalen Williams, I think that if you look at this game from the context of when it was a game, like when the Knicks were still punching, when the game was still in the balance, because I know they had a big lead for the most of the night, but we can all acknowledge watching the NBA each night, the big leads don't mean as much as they used to. Like you see comebacks night in and night out. So you still had to handle and withstand some runs from New York and answer them with runs of your own. And the Thunder did that perfectly. And you see Jalen Williams in those moments where you still had to withstand runs. He was really good. And he finishes with 19 points, 5 assists, 4 rebounds, 1 steal, 2 blocks. He goes 0 for 3 from 3 and shoots 50% overall from the floor. We're too early recording this show. I'm trying to get this out to you fast before my voice dies. But I believe in the fourth quarter he had some of those misses. I know he missed 2 layups at least in the fourth quarter where I don't want to say he's just trying stuff, but like it wasn't the cleanest shot attempts in the book. And you kind of have the advantage of working some things out in the midst of a blowout that I think if you just laser in on how he played in the first 3 quarters whenever this game was still go time for the Thunder, it'd be an even better percentage, even better stat line, I guess you could say, from Jalen Williams. And then defensively, he continues to be an elite defender, and I know that he's not going to get that moniker from a national perspective, because when you look at the Thunder defense, a lot of the people that talk about defense only do it from a statistical standpoint, and the team defense has all the statistics. And when you look at this Thunder team, you also have the perception of like Lou Dort's great, Casey Wallace is great, when Caruso's healthy, he's great. And so you want to give those guys the attributions for why this team is so good. This team would not be as good defensively without Jalen Williams. I know that you have Casey Wallace and Lou Dort, and they're spectacular, but Jalen Williams is a guy who can defend power forwards no matter his size and really shut them down, or at least make their lives really difficult down low. And for a team that really lacks size right now due to injury, that's big. And like this, he really just ties this group together defensively. And while we can talk about his offense, we can talk about his driving fall off a little bit this season. It is so important that you would not be here still without J-Dub playing the way he's playing right now. Now, that being said, of course, as a driver, he missed those 2 layups in the fourth quarter, whatever. That has to improve. That will improve, I think, with time and with development and with health. And you can go back and listen to yesterday's pod with Nick Crane about what we think can be fixed easily by Jalen Williams offensively. If you're concerned about that at all, we're not very concerned. But if you're concerned, we kind of laid out the case about J-Dub on yesterday's show. Now, Isaiah Joe, goodness gracious, 31 points, a career high, 2 assists, 1 block, and 1 turnover. He went 8 for 11 from three-point land and 11 for 16 overall. Isaiah Joe, it's not just the fact that the shots went in. And first and foremost, that's a big deal. This is a sharpshooter who's been very cold for most of this season. The shots going in matter. Like you always hear in basketball, just see one go in and it can kind of change things. Yeah, seeing 8 of them can change things. This can be a game that flips things for a shooter who's trying to get back on track. No doubt about it. But it's not just the made shots. Like you go back and you look, at his overall offensive game. It's his feel of like he had a play where he's in the corner, throws a skip pass to Hartenstein at the top of the key, and immediately off that skip pass, Isaiah Joe's cutting to the basket. It's an easy layup. The Knicks have to foul him. It's an and one now. Now you've turned a skip pass into 3 points because you're reading the defense and you're bending the defense with the pass and you're doing the right things. With the ball in your hands and off the ball. The relocation threes looked really good tonight, obviously because they went in, but also because he moved to a point where the defense can't go, and he kind of positioned himself well enough to get open shots and clean shots. He hit one from the Chase Center logo, which was awesome to see for Isaiah Joe. But again, this could be a game that really changes things. It could also be a blip on the radar. We won't know until Sunday when they play Washington if he has another good game. But the confidence seemed to be there, and he did the little things in this game besides just have a night where the ball bounced in. And a lot of those shots, the ball didn't bounce until it hit the hardwood after the net. So it was a really good shooting night from him. It wasn't really luck. It wasn't really friendly rolls. It wasn't any of that stuff. It was just Isaiah Joe playing to the ability, and of course with a career night better than the ability that he showed to this point. But what a night from him! Kudos to him because the formula was simple. We talked about this on the crossover show with Locked On Knicks. Wrote about it for Thunder on SI. Like the way the Thunder pull off a win in New York was always going to be a good night from J-Dub and Shai, and then you had to have another. If you want to call it outlier game, for like the way that you had with Wiggins in the fourth quarter last week, the way you have with Isaiah Joe going for a career night tonight. You had to have another outlier game to pull off a win. The Thunder got that. The Thunder got the win because of that, and they were able to really dominate this game from start to finish. Coming up, we'll talk AJ Mitchell injury and more. But first, we're here talking AJ Mitchell. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I want to talk about this AJ Mitchell injury real quickly to end the show. We kind of covered the ins and outs of this blowout loss, and before we're too down and out, I want to talk about AJ Mitchell. It was announced today by the Thunder, and I have a story about this on Thunder on SI to read all the details. That the toe sprain that AJ suffered at the third quarter mark of last New York game in Oklahoma City. It was initially diagnosed as a right great toe sprain. It ends up requiring surgery for like what was described as like turf toe surgery for AJ Mitchell. This will have him sidelined at least 10 to 12 weeks, and then that's the next reevaluation window for him is 10 to 12 weeks. And again, that's a reevaluation. It's not necessarily a return. We see it all the time. We saw it this year with Jay Will, where he got reevaluated and had to have another, distant out a time span with the injury of the hamstring. That being said, it sounds positive enough where the Thunder expect him to be back. I will say, this is tough. He was a great story. You know how I feel about AJ Mitchell if you listen to this podcast for any amount of time. I think that AJ Mitchell was having a great year. I think that he was solving some of the problems that they had last year as a secondary ball handler. But while it is a blow in the short term, while you're still dealing with injury, like you don't have Chet, you don't have Caruso. We'll see. Caruso went through shoot around today. We'll see what that means for him moving forward, like when he will return. But when this team is fully healthy, like when this team is fully on, and they have Chet, they have Caruso, somebody's minutes have to go. You only get to play 48 minutes a night. Just because you're fully healthy doesn't mean you get to ask the NBA to extend games, right? So you had to pull those minutes from somewhere. And if you do the math in your head of like whose minutes could be on the chopping block, it would probably be the rookie who hasn't played like a rookie, who's looked really good. But again, despite how good he's looked, come playoff time, whenever I know that, Mark didn't do it last year per se, of like shortening the rotations, but this team being so much better than they were last year, I have to assume that like you just list them off. Like come playoff time, you've got to play Lou, J-Dub, Hartenstein, Shai, big minutes. I think you've got to play Case in big minutes because of his defense. You, of course, have to play Caruso and Chet big minutes because of who they are. Chet's your second best player, and Caruso is an all-world defender and a playoff-level player, a 16-game player to help you go win a championship. You're already at 7 players, and you haven't gotten the Isaiah Joe for a shooting and shooting gravity. You haven't gotten the Wiggins save basketball stuff. You haven't gotten the Kinrich small ball, throw a curveball, and junk up a portion of the game and throw a team off kilter minutes. And most importantly, again, I don't want to act like he's going to shorten the rotations in the sense of like quantity, but in the sense of quality, I have a hard time believing that like Shai, Chet, J-Dub, Hartenstein aren't playing all 30. Dort aren't playing all 30 plus minutes a night. I think that Caruso / Kaysen or both will play a massive chunk like that a night to where you just don't, you run out of minutes. And like, yes, this is brutal. I hope that AJ Mitchell, has a healthy recovery and all that stuff. But in terms of the long-term future and in terms of the future of like winning a championship, it's not that big of a blow. Clearly, you'd wish all 18 guys were healthy. You can only take your 15 standard contracts into the postseason, but you would hope that everybody's healthy. But that's just not going to be the case ever. And if you can get healthy, if you can get Chet back, who is going to be acting as a trade deadline acquisition. Like, I know that people are going to talk from now on about what to do at the deadline, who to go trade for. Like, you're bringing in your second best player at the deadline. And like, that's typically like a phrase used for Major League Baseball because it's such a long season and you got like the 60-day IL and stuff. And you could just act like you bring a guy new into the team. But when you only had Chet for 10 games, like his presence will be a massive boost to a team that's already 31-6, right? Like, they're already incredibly good. So I just think that it's tough because AJ was such a good story. He was such a good player on the court in his role, and just a really super nice guy. And I still believe AJ long term will really help this team, and especially by second round pick standards, really help this team. But in the postseason, like which is what this season's all about, especially now that barring a collapse, like barring just a historic collapse, frankly, you have the 1 seed wrapped up. And I say historic collapse because it's technically only like 5 games or whatever, or 6 games now, whatever it is. But this Thunder team does not lose like multiple games in a row. They don't go on massive losing streaks. So they would have to buck that trend to really be in danger of losing the 1 seed. And as long as they're somewhat healthy, like as long as they have Shai, I don't see that happening. So when you integrate Chet into this roster, all bets are off, right? And again, the minutes had to come from somewhere. So AJ Mitchell is out, but he should return this year. 10 to 12 weeks is within that window where he can return this year. But on top of needing Caruso and Chet back, you'd also need to work him back into NBA readiness. And I don't know that you have enough time to do that at the end of the year. So we'll see how it all shakes out. But really all that changes, I think, is just how you should view the playoff rotation. I don't think it changes anything long-term with AJ specifically. I think that'll still be rewarded with a standard contract, as the Thunder have been proven to reward guys on these 2-way second-round deals. I believe that they're going to reward him, but it's just going to, be different at the end of his rookie season. That being said, the only other news was that they did sign Brandon Carlson to a 10-day deal. I don't think that this means anything. I think that they're just keeping him around. I wonder, like, this is just pure speculation. Let me be very clear. Pure speculation. I wonder if when that time comes to reward AJ Mitchell with a standard contract, if they don't slip Brandon Carlson onto a 2-way deal. And I'm only saying that because you've now signed him, only waived him because you didn't want to pay his guaranteed contract. You wanted to waive him before he was guaranteed, then brought him right back on a 10-day deal. And you couple that with how Mark and how especially Cam Woods talks about Brandon Carlson, I think that they really like him. It's like, I just wonder with that 2-way spot opening, whenever you do eventually convert AJ Mitchell, which I still think will happen, when you do that, could Carlson fit into your 2-way plans at the end of the season? Because they really do like him, especially down there with the blue. So keep an eye on that as well. But that's all I got for you. We made it to the end of the bonus podcast. Until next time, after the Wizards game, be good and be good to one another.